death to America, death to Israel, death to Saddam Hussein. 3 things you had to say every day from the time I was in preschool.
Shima Baughman.
Shima Baughman.
Shima Baughman.
Professor of criminal law, a leading expert on bail and sentencing.
Came to the U.S. when I was 7. I didn't speak any English.
I want to jump right in.
We hear this banging on the door. A bunch of men come in with machine guns and start yelling and saying my mom is charged with treason. She's been working against the government for freedom of faith. A close family member, she gave up my mom's name, my aunt's name, and take them to this notoriously horrible prison called Evin. And it would just get quiet. You could hear a pin drop when there's thousands of people in there. People knew that this was the time where they would just randomly execute people. Forgiveness is a process. We have to use Jesus Christ often.
It's hard to be betrayed by someone who you don't know. It hurts more when it's someone that you know. How is it even possible to forgive?
Recently went down there, the whole family was there, and I see this woman, the very woman that betrayed my mother.
Was there any type of hate toward this family member?
We're at my house in Tehran. I remember it because it was a really big day. So we're having a big family party. There's food on the stove. And after the food's been served, everyone has tea, right? They're having their tea. And I was sitting on my mom's lap. I'm a toddler, 2 or 3 years old at the time. And I spilled the tea all over myself. So I'm in tears, crying. And my mom's trying to soothe me. And then we hear this banging on the door. Banging. And all of a sudden, a bunch of men, 10 or so, come in with guns, machine guns, and start yelling, cursing at everybody, and saying my mom, in short, right, is charged with treason. And begin to take her. I'm in tears, right? Little baby crying. My sister's there. She's crying. It's just the worst moment you could ever imagine. They also take my aunt, arrest them both at the same time, take them to this notoriously horrible prison. It's called Evin. There's books written about it. It's this kind of huge fortress where, kind of horrible conditions.
So you're in this circumstance, you don't even know what's going on. Like, you're just a little toddler and your mom's going. But what is the reason why she's being taken?
Yeah, so she is charged with treason because she's been working against the government for freedom of faith, for freedom of speech, and for all these other freedoms that she doesn't enjoy. And the government that had taken over, it's a theocracy. It's forcing everyone to be Muslim. And she wanted a more Western-style democracy. That's what she was trying to fight for. And of course, when they found out that she was fighting, they arrested her and all the people that were fighting for democracy. Because once they took over after the revolution, they didn't want to tolerate any opposition. They didn't want freedom of speech or any of the freedoms. So, the newspaper editors were getting arrested. Anyone that was on any other political party besides their own got put in prison. So there were hundreds and thousands of people just put into prison immediately after the revolution.
So it's this control move, right? Yep. You don't want to comply, let's just throw you in jail.
Exactly.
Right? And so what was the catalyst that even brought her to even be, did they see her protesting? How did she even get to that point where they were like, we're gonna arrest her?
Yeah. So she was involved in a women's group trying to raise money. And at this point, she has 2 little girls. So she's not out on the streets protesting, but she's trying to donate money. She sells all the gold that my dad gives her for her wedding and donates it all to the revolution. I mean, that's how much she feels passionate about finding freedom and, just having having all the protections that she would have wanted, to have the kind of ability to speak her mind, the ability to practice. So her faith, she just wanted to have all these freedoms, and that's why she donated everything. And so anyway, so the reason they found her, though, is because a family member, a close family member, was taken and arrested because they had found out that she was involved in some work against government, and they tortured her. And because of that torture, she gave up my mom's name and my aunt's name and other people just to avoid, the kind of torture they were inflicting on her. Because she gave up the names, they tortured her, they let her go. She never had to serve. So, my mom had to serve in her stead, right?
So she's freed.
Yes, she's freed because she gave in other names. Kind of like, you give us some names, we'll let you go.
And so now your mom has to take her place.
And she gets a 10-year sentence, my mom.
10 years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you're how old?
I'm 2.5.
And you have an older sister?
I have an older sister that's a year and a half older than me, so she's, 4.
And your dad's left with 2 children and
no wife.
No wife, and she goes to this prison.
No sister, sister's taken. And
So back up. Give me the context of what's going on in the country. Let's get some clarity on that. What's going on?
So we have this Shah. He's a king of Iran. He's very friendly with the West. People generally are okay with how he does things, except for he doesn't allow for human rights, right? He doesn't allow for freedom of speech. He's also trying to clamp down on religious freedom. So people that want to veil, they're Muslim, they're true believers, they want to cover their hair. He's like, you can't cover your hair. You have to wear Western clothes. And so he's kind of going the opposite way of the West, right? It's not like you can choose whether to hijab or not. No can do on the hijab is what he says.
So they want the Western feel.
Yes.
But they don't
want the rights that come with the West.
That's
right?
kind of interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. He wants to dress like the West, but he doesn't want to give the freedoms of the right to vote, the right to speech, the right to religion. I mean, none of that. And so people don't like that. They're like, well, if we're so close to the West, if we're trying to be Westernized, let's actually do it right. Let's get democracy. And so that's what my mom was fighting for initially. And they succeeded with that, right? So they ousted the Shah. He went running to America. And they thought, okay, we're going to have elections. We're going to have the first democracy in the Middle East. That was what they were hoping for. And it was so exciting. But what happened was the Ayatollah Khomeini comes, clamps down all the opposition, right? Puts everyone in prison, like we talked about, and then decides, no, we're not going to have democracy, actually. We're going to have a theocracy. And it's going to be a fake democracy where 9 people on this guardian council get to decide everything.
It's almost the same idea of like having everything, but not understanding the sacrifice it takes for it to actually be that way.
Exactly. The plan is everyone's going to be righteous. We're all going to fast for Ramadan, and we're all going to pray, and everything's going to be close, so you have to, right? It's this idea of like ultimate obedience, universal obedience, but without your heart changing. That's what they were trying to do, to just force everyone to be religious, right? Your heart is not going to be on board if you're forced to do anything religious. It has to come from within. We know that from the scriptures.
So you're at this place where, because of all of this change, right?
Yeah.
Now it's really affecting you and your family.
Yeah.
It's really to the point where your mom is now in prison.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Tell me more about the prison and how does what's the atmosphere like there?
Yeah. So the first prison she gets into is called Evin. It's notorious.
The first prison?
Yeah. She gets transferred at one point. But the first 6 months, it's truly the most horrible prison conditions I've ever heard of in my life. And I've studied detention for 15 years.
Wow.
It is so bad. So she gets in there. There's a women's side and a men's side. And the women's side, there's so many women in there, young, old, but that there's not even any beds. So one, they don't have beds. And 2, they're all kind of in one room. And to sleep at night, they have to lay on their sides. So there's not even enough room for you to lay on your back to sleep. That's the kind of thing they're dealing with, right? So they're on their sides. She says every 2 hours, like someone yells and then they turn around so that they're not like getting sore from laying on one side, right? You can't try to shift in the night because there's not room. And there's also 4 people standing at any point. I mean, it's truly horrible. And then the worst part is, every single night, she said, they would be just waiting and it would just get quiet because people knew that this was the time where they would just randomly execute people.
Are you serious?
Yes. And so she'd sit there and they'd listen. It was like you could hear a pin drop when there's thousands of people in there. And they would just listen for gunshots and hear the bodies drop. So they would hear the gunshot and then hear a body drop. And they knew, okay, they killed 1 person tonight. Sometimes it would be 10, sometimes it'd be more. And so that's how they knew who was being executed and how many. It was just horrible. I mean, the fear that they had. And some of the stories she tells, there was women that were pregnant in there. They wouldn't let them out to have their baby. So not only did they have their baby in prison, right, somehow, but they didn't have clothes for the babies. So the women would take their sweaters and they would, with those sweaters and their hairpins, it's almost like hard to believe, knit clothing for the babies to wear while they're in prison. I mean, that's the kind of thing we're dealing with. I've never heard of anything like this, right? People having babies in prison, people having no clothes for their babies, right? The lack of healthcare, the lack of, basic, I mean, they could only shower once a week. They went to the bathroom twice a day. I mean, it was like you had to wait until your time to go to the bathroom. Like you had to hold it otherwise. It was that.
What in the world?
It was the most horrible thing you could ever imagine. I mean, so it just the most horrible detention conditions for 6 months.
And your mom is there.
She's there.
And you're at home.
Yeah.
What kind of effects do do you see? I mean, you're 2.5.
Yeah, I'm little.
You've heard the stories in the later. Your
Right.
dad. What was that like at home?
Yeah, and so we were actually really blessed because in Iran, there's this kind of culture of family where family just shows up for each other. And so my dad had 7 siblings. And they helped. They were close. They helped to take care of us. My mom's mother moved in, basically took care of us when they weren't able to help. So we were taken care of well by our family, which was so fortunate. I think a lot of people incarcerated, you don't have that same situation. But we had that situation. We had help from family. And so after the 6 months where she's in this horrible prison, she's actually, because she's originally from the northern part of Iran, they are able to transfer her to that prison rather than the one in Tehran, which is the main city where we lived. And so that prison actually had beds, and there were much more humane conditions, and so much so that we were able to visit her even. So we were able to visit and actually stay with her. So I remember some of my sister and I's earliest memories are going to prison with my mom and just being able to sleep in her bed. She had a little twin bed, and the 3 of us would just kind of cuddle in there and sleep together. And that was just amazing as a child to be able to see my mother. It was, you could imagine that feeling like of being reunited. We were okay while we weren't with her. We missed her, but being able to be reunited with her, it was just like the most greatest joy. I still remember like sitting at the fence when we first saw her, for the first time. It'd been, I think, a year and a half that we'd seen her, and then just being able to go and give her a hug and be with her. It was the greatest joy as a child I had.
So take us back at home. Dad's at home. What are the things Dad's saying to help you understand what's going on from the lens of your perspective of this toddler?
My dad was kind of genius. I don't know if he planned this, but he was a neurosurgeon, right? And what he chose to do, he didn't have to, was to work for this new government. So he worked for the government that imprisoned his wife. And he was kind of one of their most highly respected neurosurgeons. Because you can't imagine in a country like Iran, you don't have a ton of neurosurgeons. You have a big war, lots of people dying. So he's kind of flying into the, front lines of the war, doing surgeries on people that are, harmed by the war. And so they're seeing him as this hero because he's this, medical doctor helping save lives. And so he's doing this. And in the meanwhile, kind of working favor with this government, which ends up helping my mom so much because eventually, after 2 years, he's able to, because he's gained the trust of these leaders. He's working on the war. He's the government go-to neurosurgeon. He's the government's go-to neurosurgeon. He's able to then do a procedure on one of the higher up religious leaders in the city. And they say, thank you so much for helping me. What can we do to help you? And so my dad is like,
actually, yeah.
I got an idea, right? His mom, my wife, my sister are both in prison. And the guy's like, I'll take care of it. And within 6 months, so my mom's able to serve 2.5 years because of my dad's work here.
Of a 10-year sentence.
10-year sentence.
So was it calculated?
Well, we talked to him and he just kind of, I knew he was kind of, I think he was just smart. I think he just knew that, things have changed. This is the government. I need to kind of make peace with the change that happened in my country, that even though I don't support it, right? He didn't support the change, but he made peace with it. And I think it ended up helping. I don't think he ever knew, well, then my wife's going to be put in prison and then I'm going to, he didn't go to them after she was in prison, but he continued to work with them when he didn't have to. He had other places he could work as a neurologist, other places he could work as a neurosurgeon, but he chose to work for them. And I think probably by divine design, he was able to then save my mom.
Wow. And what religion was your family at the time?
They're Muslim. So most people, almost everyone in Iran is Muslim. It's 99%.
Wow.
Muslim. Yeah. It's interesting because I look at it now, with kind of years in the past, I admire my mom so much. And I think she was so brave. And for a mother, somebody to risk her life, her family's life, to stand up for what she believed, for religious freedom, for freedom of speech, for the ability to vote and practice. And I think it's so respectful and admirable. But at the time, it was not deemed to be so. My family was so ashamed. Her mother, couldn't even speak of it. Nobody in the family would speak of it. It was like my mom went away. They didn't want to say that she was in prison because it was shameful. Even though they all didn't support the government, they knew that this was a travesty. It was still a shame. It was a shame on the family for my mom to be put in prison. And so there was a lot of that, a lot of shame. And as a child, a lot of anger I was taught as I was growing up in this regime, right? In this new kind of order in Iran. And what they would teach you from initially entering school, from the time I was in preschool, instead of, you'd say the Pledge of Allegiance in America, where you are grateful for the things that your flag represents or the positive things in your country. I was taught hatred. And it was, 3 things you had to say every day. Everyone had to chant it. And it's, Magba America, Magba Israel, Magba Saddam. It's a death to America, death to Israel, death to Saddam Hussein. And Saddam Hussein was the war that we were having against. It was Iraq. He was the president of Iraq. And so that's the kind of thing that the regime was bringing, a lot of hate. And you were saying, try to teach kids hate at this young age. So that's kind of what we were taught. And amazingly, a blessing was my parents were not that way. They were not full of hate, and they were full of love, and my family too. So we were taught otherwise at home. But I think, that's what the government tried to teach us as kids. That's what I was, encountering. While my mom's in prison, I'm, taught to hate.
Was there any type of hate toward this family member? Was there any type of, how did your mom or even you, knowing that, she's in jail, now this family member is not.
Right. Oh,
what was that like?
Yes, there was definitely a lot of ostracism of her. She was not coming to any more family parties. She was kind of ostracized from the family because that was shameful too, right? How dare you turn in your own blood? Yes, you were being tortured, but there was so much shame on her end too for years. It was a very difficult situation she had put herself in. And I think she felt a lot of shame and guilt from it. I'm here, my family members are in prison suffering. Now I'm okay and they're not because of me. I think she felt a lot of shame too.
Ostracized, tell me more about that. What did that look like for you internally, for you as a child, even after the fact or even during the time? What were some of the thoughts that you personally had? If you're okay to share.
So as a child, I wasn't keen on this stuff because I was so young. I only learned later how she was treated and how it went down. But I know that there was a lot of anger in my family for her. And even when I found out years later, I was angry, right? But I wasn't at the time because I didn't know. But I was. When I found out, I was like, wait, it was a member. My mom didn't even tell me for years because that's the kind of woman she is. She doesn't want anyone to hate anybody, and she has so much love in her heart. She's such a Christ-like woman. But when I did find out, it's like my family, we all felt that kind of, we felt that anger on her behalf. Like, how could you, have this woman still in our family that did this to you? We were so angry. And we still have family members now, years later, I think it's like 40 years later, are still angry at her and don't want her around.
What were some of the thoughts that you had?
I was angry. I was frustrated. I was like, how could you put your needs above my own mother's? We all suffered so much because of her decision to kind of get off easier, right? And let my mom suffer for longer and more painfully and potentially die. My mom could have died. She could have been one of the random people called up and killed in that prison. She just wasn't by an act of God, right? Because it was just random. There was no rhyme or reason to who they killed. She could have been one of them, and she wasn't. It was just...
So there's times when you're thinking, and I'm sure that these nights whenever she could hear the bodies hit the floor, right?
Yeah.
Like, did she ever explain what that was like for her?
Oh, it was horrible. She talks about the fear that they had, and she was actually one of the older inmates because she was in her 20s, and some of the girls were college girls. They're mostly young protesters, right? And she just remembers kind of trying to befriend them and make them feel it's okay. I think she took a little bit more of a maternal role, but deep down she's afraid and she misses us every day. That's the biggest thing is just, how could I have done this? And really you see the long lasting effects because I see my mom now and she's the least political person you ever meet because she's just like, I learned my lesson. Like, and I'm like, no, you could, she still votes and things.
Wow.
But it's like because it just scarred her, right? It's like, this is what happens when you get involved in politics, right? And it's not true, but that's her experience. It was just so painful. It's such a scar for her to have been punished that way.
So this is something that's been very, very challenging for the entire family. Your mom is in prison. And from what I understand, she has a dream.
Yes.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, she has this dream that she's in an airplane and she's flying over these beautiful fall colors. And somehow in her dream, she knows she's in America, but she's never been to America, never seen it. But she knows deep in her heart, I'm in America. And she starts thinking like, why am I having this dream? I'm in America. I'm in year 2 of my 10-year sentence. There's just no way. I'm not even close to America. As far as from America as I could be. But yet she has this dream. And then we have this fulfillment a few years later. So my dad miraculously gets her out. We're able to come to the US and then end up in upstate New York, where the most beautiful fall colors are there. And so she knows that this is all part of God's plan for her, that, you know, she was supposed to serve in prison, and through the miracles that happened, be able to be released and then be able to stay in America once she found the Church of Jesus Christ, Latter-day Saints.
So she's in this place she's never been before. She assumes that it is America.
Yes.
And you're saying, I'm understanding like that gives her hope.
It gives her hope, but confusion, right? She has hope that she sees America, but she's also confused as to, why am I seeing America? This is so confusing. You know, she has no idea what's about to come.
So then
it's like a premonition of what's going to happen, and she has no idea.
What does she think that it is?
I mean, it does, you know, I guess in a sense it gives her hope, but she's also confused. Like, how can this be? I mean, am I really going to go to America? And then she does. But at the time, she had no idea that
But to a degree, it was like, oh, she had the belief that this is the future and this is going to happen, and I don't know how.
Yes.
So I need to hold on.
Yes. Oh, yes. She's always had this belief that she was guided by the hand of God. And so she knew that with this dream, that something was coming, and she didn't know how. She was confused as to the path, but she knew that something was in store for her and that God was going to protect her. And she's always had this kind of strong faith in God.
Tell me about the day that she comes home.
I mean, it's amazing. It's the most magical reunion. I mean, all of us are so happy. I think there's parties for weeks, right? It's like a wedding. You know, it's like parties for everyone in the family comes. We all just, this great reuniting. And as kids, it's like finally our family's restored, right? We have our mom back and everything's awesome. She's able to have another child. And, you know, it's just the most magical time you could ever imagine for a family.
Are there any times, is there any memory that you have or that you've been told of her confronting this family member?
No, she never did.
It just kind of kept going.
It just kept going, yeah. Yeah, and she was not invited to the family functions that we'd be going to. I mean, I think she had other things that she would go to, but the broader family functions, she really wasn't invited to a lot of that. So it was a pretty difficult thing for her after she kind of, you know, turned in my mom and my aunt.
So it kind of just like, kind of fades naturally.
Yeah.
And so how long is it till you make it to America? How does that happen? Where do we get... How do we get to there in the story? So
more miracles. We're in the midst of the Iran-Iraq War, right? My dad's kind of working, helping with this, and it's still ongoing. And in 1986, there's this opportunity that my dad has to come to UCLA. And it's not something he sought out, but one of the other residents had applied. He applied to UCLA in Japan, and Japan came through, and he's like, I'm getting my family out of here because it's a war. And we're literally in our basement at night, with towels on our faces because Saddam Hussein is bombing Tehran, and that's where we live. So it's, we're in...
Crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. As a kid, what I remember most what matters to kids is like there was no candy to be bought. There's no soda. You go to the corner store, they don't have candy to buy. And so it's like, you think of communist Russia, like that's what we're dealing with. There aren't things, we don't get things. I remember my dad's, like one of my fondest memories, two of them as a kid, my dad brought home a banana, like one banana. Because you can't find bananas in Iran. Like, where are you getting a banana?
Yeah.
He bought one banana. It was like black. And we split it up 4 ways, right? All of us get a little piece of this banana. Because that's what they have. And I remember once he brought strawberry. Like, it's just like this kind of, what do you call it? This, like the war mentality of scarcity is like real. It's like we don't have things. We don't have, especially, kind of foreign things. So like my favorite thing was a Kit Kat as a kid. Loved Kit Kat.
I love a Kit Kat.
Yeah, right. And it's like every day I'd go over to the corner store, no Kit Kats. Like once a month, maybe there'd be one to buy and we could get one. But that's the kind of thing we were dealing with in Iran. And so, then we have this opportunity to go to UCLA, and you can imagine the shift, right? You come to America, you go to the grocery store. That was one of my most impactful moments as I came to America. What I really appreciated was to walk down the aisles. And I'm like, there's not just Kit Kats. There's like Hershey's bars and like everything you can imagine.
Wow.
And the Cheetos and the chips. And I just remember thinking, this is amazing. I'm never going back to Iran.
I'm thinking about like the candy man. That's what you
exactly.
think about.
That's exactly
Wonka,
It was so great.
There's this night and day difference, right? Of abundance.
Yes.
Getting to America. You come to America, he's in school, Is that what he gets accepted to UCLA?
So he actually had finished his residency in neurosurgery, and he's doing a 1-year research fellowship. So we really only have permission to stay for 1 year. It's this kind of unpaid, research position, which is we're grateful for because we're out of Iran. And at that point, my mom joins the church. And so that is a whole
in that
whole
year
story.
time.
Within a few months. So we come in August. We are introduced in the church in December. And it's a really cool story. I'll just tell you in case you want to hear it. But there's a woman who's a nurse at UCLA, and she decides, she's a nurse at UCLA. She sees my dad, and she's from Iran. She's a Persian convert and has been living in America. And she thinks, I should talk to this man about the gospel because he's Persian too. And she dismisses it. She's like, he's Muslim. He's not going to want to hear about it. And then the prompting comes again. Talk to him about the gospel. And she's like, they're Muslim, they'll kill him. He's about to go back. I know that he's here for 1 year. But then she sees him again a third time, and he's at the water fountain. And she has a prompting again. And this time she's like, okay, third time, can't ignore it. She goes right up to him and says, will you and your family come to my Christmas party? And my dad says yes, because we have no friends. We're new immigrants. We're like, yes, we would love to. And so we go, and my mom actually, it's divine design, right? She sees on her bookshelf, she has this pamphlet that the church used to have about how families can be together forever. She opens this up, reads this, and then back it says, if you want to talk about this, the missionaries can come. So she, at the end of the party, brings this pamphlet to the friend. And she's like, I would love to meet with these missionaries. Do you know how I can find them? And, this woman's like, yeah, I do. I'll tell you about the missionaries. So then she starts meeting with them, converts, and then she's like, I'm not going back. Tells my dad, we're staying. We got to figure out a way because they'll kill me if I go back.
So she wants to be baptized.
She wants to be baptized.
If she is baptized,
yeah,
they'll kill her.
They'll kill her.
So
and she knows it because she's already kind of been in prison. She knows that she's in trouble if she heads back. Yeah.
She's already been to prison.
She's already been to prison.
She knows they're not playing.
They're not messing around.
But but that's how badly she wants
That's how badly she wanted it. No, she knew it was the right thing. And she did feel guided by the hand of the Lord to this whole thing. I mean, she knew it's miraculous she got out of prison. Miraculous that we ended up in the U.S. Miraculous that we found the church, right? 2% of the world is members of the Church of Jesus Christ, Latter-day Saints. And it so happens, right, the one nurse that speaks Farsi is working with my dad at UCLA. I mean, it's one of those things. It's that stuff you don't make that stuff up. It comes from the hand of the Lord. And so she felt that this was very something that the Lord wanted her to do.
So what's she going to do?
So she joins the church, and then we apply for...
not knowing how she's going to go back?
Not knowing, no. And we don't even have asylum at this point. If she took a risk, she took the risk. She's
Wait a second.
Yep.
But she might have to go back.
She might have to go back.
But she still doesn't.
She got baptized knowing that she might have to go back. Yeah.
And if she does go back,
I know she knew that she'd have to suffer the consequences if they found out. Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
And your dad is just your mom that's getting baptized at this point.
So my mom and my older sister, at that point she's 8, so I'm only 7, so I don't get baptized yet. I wait a year, but my sister and my mom are both baptized right away.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tell me about the baptism.
Oh, I mean, it was amazing. I still remember the dresses they were wearing and how we were there. It's just, we just felt so embraced by the ward that we were in LA. That's where we were at first. And we felt so much love in primary. I still remember I'd be sitting next to Mariam. This is the woman that converted us. And she would be teaching me how the hymns went because you went one line. And then, we'd go to these parties. And primary is just so fun. Right? I was actually telling my husband, I'm like, we should hand out flyers to the kids in the neighborhood just to come to primary because it's so fun. It's it's a free class. You learn about Jesus. This is, so I ate it all up. We loved it. It's unlike anything we'd ever seen in our lives because religion back home was you'd watch your parents pray, you'd kind of learn how to pray, but it was just at home. We didn't have a place to go worship with kids. And so to have that opportunity, it was life-changing. We loved it. And especially the kids in my family really just gravitated toward the church. We loved being raised in the church, primary, and then the youth programs. I mean, it was just such a pivotal part of us becoming American and learning how to be here.
Wow. So your mom's baptized. She risks her life to be baptized.
Yeah.
Your sister gets baptized.
Yeah.
But then you were supposed to be there for a year. So
Yeah.
how did you stay longer?
Yeah. So we found out, I think through friends, right, that we were able to apply for asylum because of my mom's prison sentence. So I forgot to mention too, we weren't ever supposed to be released out of Iran. She was supposed to be, once she got out of her 2.5 years, she was still supposed to be on probation for the remaining part of it. She wasn't supposed to leave the country, right? You know how that works, right? You're not supposed to, after probation. So anyway, we end up sneaking out, basically. I mean, we didn't really sneak out, but we went through
That was a miracle. Was the miracle.
It was a miracle because they could have arrested her at the airport to say, "What are you doing?" And somehow, miraculously, her passport didn't, ding or kind of alarm for them. It should have, but it didn't. And so that's why we had no idea we were able to even leave. And so because of that, because of those circumstances, then we're able to apply for asylum in America, and we get this asylum, and then we're able to stay and practice our religion safely and be able to have all these opportunities. And for my dad, it's not as much the faith, but for him, he sees these 3 daughters he has, and he's like, I want them to have opportunity, so I'm willing to start over to do everything again in the U.S. just so that my daughters can have an opportunity to be free and make decisions and have successful careers and the opportunities that only America can bring.
So your dad is a neurosurgeon.
Yeah.
He comes back to the United States to do a year at UCLA.
Yeah.
Post-residency.
Right.
Just some research.
Yeah.
And so can he practice this?
No. And so that's the thing. So that's what I meant by, he gave up everything because initially he's doing UCLA work, research, but that's over. And then it's like, well, what do we do now? So my dad ends up working. We moved to Las Vegas because we know a Persian guy. Somebody knows a Persian guy, right? That's going to help us. And he hires my mom to work at the dry cleaners. And she doesn't know anything. I mean, luckily she learned how to sew from her mom. So she knows how to sew. So she's doing alterations. She's also dry cleaning. And eventually she works so hard that they fire everyone else and just have her running the whole place.
Are you
so
serious?
She's working from like 7 a.m. till, 10 p.m. at this dry cleaners. My dad is watching us and studying because he needs to pass a test to become a doctor in America. And then once my mom gets home, my dad goes and drives a truck for the casinos, driving kind of deliveries and things. And so they're like both doing this work. My dad's a neurosurgeon.
He's a neurosurgeon.
Yes, and he's driving this truck. My mom's never worked. She's always, had us and been home with the kids, and she's working all day. And they're doing it because they want to be able to live in freedom. And my mom for her faith, and my dad for his daughters. That's what they wanted.
Wow. So they give up everything.
They give up everything. I mean, land, all the, a comfortable life in Iran, despite the bombing. They were living in relative prosperity. But here, no, we didn't have furniture. So we come to America. Yeah, we don't have furniture. I remember the first time, someone came to our home and they were visiting us, and they noticed we didn't have couches and we didn't have beds. So we had mattresses on the floor. That's where we were sleeping. And we found the mattresses where? On the side of the road. I mean, that's where we were because we just didn't have any money. But we were so grateful to be in America. It's not like we're going to go back to our beds in Iran. We'd rather sleep on the floor and have a dirty mattress than to be back in Iran.
Rather have freedom in a dirty mattress than no freedom.
I'll take
and have everything you need.
Exactly.
Wow.
And so I remember one of the visiting teachers came early on and was like, "Oh, you guys don't have beds. Well, the church can maybe help you guys." And we're like, "Really?" And they, this is a couple years in, the DI helped provide us bunk beds. And I just remember the happiest day, right, was when we got bunk beds. It was like, "Oh, I have a bed." It's so exciting. And I was in 3rd grade before a couple years I'm sleeping on a mattress on the floor in America. And then we finally get beds. But yeah, that's the kind of upbringing we had in America.
So you're planning on staying in America.
Yeah.
You're not going back. If you go back, then it's
well,
over.
And that's the thing. So we want to stay in America, but it's every step of it until my dad gets residency. It's it's unsure because there's all these tests he has to take. And there's people that take 10 years to pass these tests. But through prayer and fasting and a lot of faith, my dad passes every single one of these tests the first time. So there's an English proficiency test. It takes people years. He passed it the first time. There's another test for the kind of passing medical school.
Years. He does
years. He does them back to back because everyone. My dad's like, if I
pass, he's a genius.
Well, I don't know. He's smart, but I just think he was blessed. I really do. I think it was the faith and the blessings and the sacrifice my mom was willing to take. I'm willing to risk my life, God. Help my dad. Help my husband pass these tests. I really think she had a lot of. Her and God were kind of chatting about this, and she really begged him, can we please stay in America? I want to be able to practice my faith. And I think he just made it happen. He blessed my dad more beyond his natural intelligence to be able to, for the first time, pass these tests. I mean, that's pretty miraculous. His English was good, but it's not that good. It's like people that had been in America for tens of years were failing this test. And he was passing it with being there for 6 months. It was just amazing.
So you're still kind of, hopefully this will work. Hopefully this will work.
Yes.
You're a member of the church. He's still not a member of the church at the time.
He actually ends up joining, but then never really being active. He started smoking at the age of 9 because he lived in this kind of small town. And I think he felt a lot of guilt going to church. So he just didn't ever want to go. He felt bad about it. And it was shameful because I think at the time it's like, come on, just come to church. It's okay if you smoke. But I think he just felt a lot of guilt about it. And we did too as kids. We were kind of like, oh, Dad smokes.
So he can't go to church because he smokes?
Which it's crazy. But that's how he felt. I think that was kind of hard for him.
But still a very devout man, still a very religious man.
Yes.
Still very, very family oriented.
Yes, very family oriented.
But your mom is carrying this, like she really feels inspired to join the church. She joins the church, and then now you're a member of the church. Your sister's a member of the church,
right.
And you're still teetering on the idea of if you're going to go back or not.
Yeah, until my dad finally gets residency.
So how long did that take?
2 more years. So the first year we joined the church and decide we're going to hope to stay. And then it takes 2 more years before my dad's able to complete all the tests that he needs to take. And then he gets residency in New York. And so that's where
he's kind of starting over in his medical career.
Exactly.
From
but
scratch.
This time instead of neurosurgery, he does neurology because it's 4 years, not 7. So he's like, I'm already 40. Let me just kind of do a shorter thing. And so that's what he ends up practicing.
But that's still young.
It's still, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
He's 40. So now he's a neurologist.
Right.
And you're in New York.
Right.
And you're a member of the church. Was there any twinkling of your mom being like, this was the place of this dream?
Absolutely. And I remember there was this moment, and I don't think my mom decided this at this moment, but she knew after it was right so we had 2 options after my dad finished residency in New York. We could go to Florida, like the South, or New York. And I remember they chose New York. I think the schools were better and whatnot. But once we end up in New York, I mean, there's no fall colors in Florida. Like we were certainly destined for New York. And so she, once they ended up there, she's like, this is my dream. And it was the American dream. I mean, you think of, right, going from mattresses on the floor to my parents eventually being able to buy a home because they saved all this money in New York in the Hudson Valley, one of the prettiest parts of the country, and be able to, have land and worship freely and be able to kind of do all the things, have their daughters go to college and become doctors if they want, which is what they wanted for all of us. But some of us failed and others did.
But that
was their dream.
Their dream was for you to be a doctor.
All of us, yes.
All of you to be a doctor. But you choose to be
a lawyer, then law professor.
So currently you're a law professor.
Right.
And at the time you choose, I'm just understanding the story. Is there any connection for you?
Oh, absolutely.
What do you feel is that connection that caused you to perhaps take this route versus the other?
And I look at myself and my sister, my older sister and I, we both have this internal sense that drives us of justice. And for her, it's banking and the poor, right? She has worked really hard, dedicated her career to helping people who are poor get access to banking. And for me, it's been justice and mercy and, directly trying to help people that are incarcerated. I've been driven to have to create a criminal justice system that has more mercy in it, that has more fairness, that we think about those who are incarcerated and maybe think about them differently. Also, the kind of religious freedom thing. This is something, my first case I get, when I'm able to pick a case out of law school at a law firm, when I have resources to do pro bono work. What do? I pick a case of an inmate who's a Jewish rabbi, and he's not able to pray in his cell. And why is that? Is that by accident? I think it's because of my mom, right? I see my mom, and she gave everything up for her religious freedom, for her freedom of speech, and all these beautiful freedoms, these divinely inspired Bill of Rights that we have. And yet we still have gaps, right? Even in America. And so I'm there. I'm feeling like I've been brought here. I have this background from my mom. And what's my role? It's to help fill the gaps, right? We still have a much more beautiful, kind of more perfect union than most places. I think we have a constitution that's the envy of the world, right? We have all these beautiful laws and principles and doctrines in place in our legal system. But I see my role as my mom is like, where can I improve it? And I do feel like my mom felt that I was brought by the hand of the Lord. And, the Book of Mormon talks about that everyone brought to America has been brought by the hand of the Lord. I mean, we're all brought for a reason, right? So I know that there's some cause for me. There's some, injustice I can cure. There's more work I can do. I can try to be the Lord's hands here in some way. And so because of my direct experience with incarceration and religious freedom, I think those are the areas that really appeal to me more than anything. And that's why I've dedicated my career. Nowadays, it's, showing how religion can help people incarcerated. How can it improve their lives? How can these principles that we learn, these divine justice principles, help people that are incarcerated?
See, there's a soft spot in your heart that you feel.
Yes.
Just understanding the background of your mother being incarcerated.
Exactly.
There's a lot of more to a lot of these stories that people don't consider or maybe even realize.
Right.
And you feel a need to be a part of that.
Yeah.
You could have been a doctor, no question. It would have been like, yeah, you have the capacity to do it, but this is more special to you. This means more to you. There's more substance for you.
Yes. This is what gets me excited. And I'm still excited about it, 15 years in, because I know there's more to do and there's good work to be done that, I can try to kind of further these causes with my my faith and my research.
So what an interesting perspective though, looking at it with, you obviously have the Constitution, but then adding this idea, this added measure of what faith is, in that you would say that those are things that kind of contradict to a degree, right?
Yeah, I think it's funny because I think nowadays we don't understand how faith and the Constitution really come together, but when you study the history,
they should go together.
Right. The history, not just of the U.S. Constitution, but kind of from due process, right? Like all of these rights, they were all divinely inspired. They came from the law of Moses in some ways, right? All of these principles of Constitution and democracy, and they arose from religion, from Judeo-Christian values, and so I think it's not that weird. It does seem a little weird.
Actually, it should be.
Yeah,
it should be
one and the same. And I think sometimes we're just like, well, the Constitution's separate from, religion. But it's like, well, the people that formed it surely didn't think so. They wanted these rights so that they could practice freely, right? America was one of the few countries that first was established without a state church. It didn't have a state church. It was unusual at the time. Denmark, UK, all these countries, right? They all had state churches. It was the way to do. And then here we are, founders coming here, having had the same background I had, religious persecution, because they were some sort of minority, right, in their country. They didn't want that. And so it's like, that's why America is so special, I think, in some ways, because you have these people that come, disenfranchised, right, persecuted, put in harm's way in other contexts. And then they come here, they're like, okay, how do we make that not happen to anyone else?
Yeah.
Right? And it's still, again, not perfect. At the time, it's like there's still slavery and there's all these problems. But we're moving towards a more perfect union.
Little by little.
Little by little.
Little by little. So you mentioned that there are some gaps that you hope to fill. What was your background, your experience, understanding of the restored church? What are the gaps that you see?
Yeah. Lots, but, a couple, right? Where do I start? One is, I think our criminal justice system is operating on kind of an extreme version of the law of Moses. I think it's very punitive, probably even more than law of Moses. It's like, you poke someone's eye out. We're not going to poke your eye out. We're going to poke both your eyes out and take your leg. That's kind of where we're at, right? If you think about the terms of what harm you cause versus how much you're punished. And so I'd love to see more principles of the law of Christ infused into the legal system, because as we talked about, the legal system, it's not just law. It comes from the law of Moses. Retributivism is the term, but it's basically law of Moses. It's like, you poke my eye out, I'll poke your eye out. You you steal a loaf of bread, I'll cut your arm off. That's kind of the... Even
though they're not cutting it off, it's like they are cutting it off because of the lack of you're being put in and incarcerated for a number of years.
Exactly.
Disconnected from family.
Exactly.
Keep going.
Yeah. And so this is the kind of, that's the punitive system that we live under. And I would love to see it infused with more principles from the gospel of Jesus Christ of redemption, of forgiveness, of the ability for someone to change, rehabilitation, right? Those are principles that we talk about. But when you look at our carceral system, there's not really room for rehabilitation, right? You get thrown into prison. There might be a little education. I'm hoping to see more religion in there. And there's some, but that's the kind of thing. When people find faith, whatever it might be, it doesn't have to be our faith that we share, but whatever faith, it does change them. And so I'd love to see more of that. You think of, so there's all these studies, 90% of the studies that happen over 70 years. And that's kind of a lot. This is a meta-analysis, right?
Wow, yeah.
Show that religious inmates are 90% less likely to commit crime. I mean, it's so effective. And you think of like the number one program to get people off drugs and alcohol. Do you know what that is?
It's the AA.
It's AAA. And what is it based on? Faith in God. It's faith. It's faith in a divine being, and that's a critical part of the process. So these are things that I'm seeing in incarceration that are exciting as far as change, is that people that do find faith, whatever faith that might be, right, are able to find change. And I see our criminal justice system, potentially moving that direction instead of one where it's just more punitive. Let's just throw the book at everybody. Let's see, for those who are willing to change, why not allow them to? Because it's better for everyone.
But isn't that the point of it?
Yeah.
Isn't the point of,
yes,
instead of it just being the punishment, right? Don't we actually want people to change?
Yes. Well, and I think that's the funny thing is I think people think, oh, they're going to go to prison to change. That's how we hold them accountable. And we do hold them accountable that way. Yeah. But right now our prison system isn't set up to help people change, right? I think if you were to change it that way, you'd have a lot more access to faith. Right? You'd have good access to religion. I think our Utah prisons have great access to prison. Not all over. Good access to education, but others don't. I mean, you need to change the person that they are so that they can come out a new person. If you just leave them in there locked up with other people who have committed crimes, you're not really getting anything different when you let them out, right?
Yeah, of course you're not. So that's one of the bigger gaps is just there's not enough religiosity infused and intertwined.
Yeah.
And you're
I
saying
think that's the interesting thing is I think people in my space, so I'm a criminal law professor, I do criminal justice policy. There's a lot of people like me. And even for me, I missed it. It's like we're missing the biggest, easiest fix, which is faith. And I think people don't want to say, academics don't want to say that's the answer, is faith. And even it's funny when you talk to people in the field.
Why not though?
Well, I think it's like they think it's like that's not academic. Faith that's for people to do on Sundays. It's like you want to compartmentalize your life, right? That's my faith. This is my work, and my work has to be. And I even thought this. It's like my work has to be based on empirical methods and based on theoretical theories that sound great, not principles of faith of Jesus Christ. But when as I 15 years in, I'm like, those are the principles that actually work, right? When I think of,
and there's data that shows that.
There's data that shows that. And you think of like forgiveness, right? This principle we learned at church, that helps people to overcome, being victimized by crime, right? So much more than anything else. So it helps you psychologically. It helps your health. Like, your heart rate goes down, your blood pressure and cardiovascular symptoms that you feel with the hate that you feel in your heart when you're, angry at someone. All of those symptoms go down when you're able to forgive. There's just so many health benefits to the victim of forgiving. It's like these things that's like we're taught to forgive, right, in the Bible and the Book of Mormon, but it actually helps us. Right? And you think of when science and faith come together to prove the same point. And that's usually what it is. I think science does confirm faith. So it's like, these principles we learn through faith
of course
are just kind of reinforced by science.
So there is science that does show the effects of faith, the effects of religiosity. And you're saying that there's almost like just a trend, right?
Yes.
Or a way of thinking of just saying, well, we don't want to really infuse this idea because it's in the academic world, it doesn't really have enough backed evidence.
Yeah, and I think it's almost like it's like been there before our very eyes, but we haven't seen it. That's what I'm seeing. So when I first got clued into this, so I've been studying bail, for instance, for years. I mean, like 10 years. I'm a national expert on bail. I write this book, has nothing to do with faith because I'm clueless at this point, right? I'm like writing academic, Cambridge University Press, right? I'm so fancy. And I write this book and it's like, and then I read a book from my friend, secular book, unrelated. She has nothing to do with faith. But in this book, I'm seeing this thing, and it's also about bail because I read every book on bail, right? I'm reading this book and it's talking about these people that are in jail and they're going up for their bail hearing. And all this research I've been trying to talk about where I'm trying to talk judges into setting lower bail amounts for poor people. I'm like, look, you throw a high bail amount, they can't get out. They lose their job. They lose their child custody.
It's just the long term.
Long term, they go down the toilet, right? So that's where I'm going. What she does, she documents communities and what they're doing about these bail problems. And what happens is she follows this pastor in Louisiana who has her congregation go to these bail hearings and just sit there. They wear these yellow T-shirts and they sit there next to the guy who's incarcerated as just their witnesses. Because usually these people, they don't have any family. They don't have any friends. They're just being like a ministering brother or sister to someone who's incarcerated. And those judges are setting lower bail amounts for these people than any of my research showed. Right? So I'm seeing this. I'm like, wait a minute.
What?
This is more effective. It's more effective when you go and look at mercy and look at when you touch the judge's heart. Right? That's what they're doing. They're touching the judge's heart rather than I'm trying to go to his brain. I'm trying to go, judges, like, be smarter,
Logically.
be logic. And they're like, no, I'm just going to go with my gut. That's what they tell me when I present my research to federal judges. They're like, we're just going to go with our gut. That's what they say. But when they see, these people that are faithful and they're just like loving these incarcerated, it forces them to think, maybe I love them too. Maybe that's my brother or sister too. You know what I mean? It's like changing hearts versus mind. And that's where, it's almost like that's a more effective way. I'm going to use that, but it's also something I believe. But do you know what I'm saying? It's like
it's almost as if, because a judge's job, and you can help me with this perspective, because I want to kind of back up to a degree and think, okay, from your expertise in law, right? A lot of times when we think of forgiveness, when we think of justice, when we think of mercy, we almost kind of infuse these judicial principles, right? And think, well, they did it. They deserve the punishment. They deserve the change.
That's right.
They deserve this.
That's right.
And you're saying, well, let's take a step back and let's add some of the gospel principles to it too.
Yes.
And what does that even look like?
Yeah, that's such a great point. And I think for sure, I'm not saying, right, when people have harmed others that they should just be released, that we shouldn't punish anyone, right? I do believe that accountability should be had. And I think it's good for people, right? I have this great friend who you should interview, Dave DeRoche from the Other Side Academy. Do you know about him?
I think it sounds familiar.
And he's an ex-convict. He was arrested over 25 times. And he was about to be sentenced for like 25 years. And the judge gave him this chance to go to this place that basically was founded on the principles of faith and change. And they allowed him to go work there. And through these principles, he found Jesus Christ and was able to change. I mean, not directly because, it's faith-based, but not Christian. But anyway, I'm just like, I see that and I'm kind of like, that is how we do it, right? That's the kind of principles that's exciting. But Dave, what he'll tell you is that, he says, I deserve to be incarcerated. He's like, I was robbing homes and I knew I was doing it. I was making decisions that were wrong on purpose. And so I think there's definitely room for accountability. I think people need to be held accountable. But at one point in prison, right, he's then willing to change. And whatever that point is where we could figure out people are willing to change, their hearts are open to a new way of life, they want to give up drugs and crime, then that's where we need to step in as a society and say, okay, we're going to give you a chance. And it reminds me of, you brought up earlier, 3rd Nephi, but the Gadianton robbers, right? They're like the criminals of the Book of Mormon.
That's right.
They are the serial killers. They're the robbers. I mean, at one point it says they take women and children into the wilderness, and we don't know what they do, but that doesn't sound good, right? And we know they're doing all these bad things, but then what happens, when they're imprisoned and then they decide, we want to give up this way of life. We want to give up the crime. What do they do to them? They let them out. They give them land, and they're like, okay, join us. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. It's in the Book of Mormon.
The point but I think that the question that many of us have is, because God or Jesus, he says, I gotta think of the exit. He commands us to forgive everyone. It's for you is to forgive all men.
That's right.
But I'll forgive who I'll forgive.
Yes.
But you, it's commanded to forgive all people, right? And then you have the other verse where it's like, 70 times 7.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
To always forgive.
So in Matthew 7:2, he also says, for with what judgment ye judge, you will be judged.
And so I think a lot of people are thinking like, okay, what in the world is he saying? Like, is he trying to say that I'm going to be condemned because of the things that I'm doing? Like, and how is it even possible to forgive? Because I think like even with the case of your mom, some of the hardest things to forgive are the things when the people that have trespassed against us are the people that we know the most.
That's right.
That's really, it's hard to be betrayed by someone who you don't know well. You can be, but it hurts more when it's someone that you know.
Oh, absolutely.
And so if we really want to get real with this, like you're talking religiosity, there's some people that are being convicted for things that they are of high standing in religious in religious leadership,
Yep.
right? Or people that we know personally,
Right.
that are committing crimes against us,
Yep.
that aren't just they like took your candy bar, right? These are
Right.
people who are like
Yeah.
doing serious things,
Right.
And so like what's the difference between reconciliation and forgiveness, right? Are there gaps with that?
Oh, it's so good because I think we like to see it as, I'm the harmed and they're the person that harmed me. They're the criminal. I'm the victim. But when we think about things in light of the gospel, it's like we're all sinners, right? And crime is a sin. It's a type of sin.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? And so it's like, yes, they're a criminal under the guise of the law, but I'm also a sinner. And so it's like Elder Renlund said at last conference, it's like somebody drowning in 3 meters of water, judging someone that's drowning in 4 meters of water. It's like, are we that different, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's like
We're drowning.
We're all drowning. We're all sinful. We all need the grace and the atonement of our Savior Jesus Christ. None of us are denying that we need that atonement, but yet we're willing to judge people whose sins look differently than ours do. And I think we need to be careful. Like we talk about, the way we judge, we're going to be judged. And if we're judging them, not considering their past and their hearts and what they've gone through, like, don't we want God to judge us with our hearts and what we intend to do rather than just kind of, harshly with just based on our actions?
Yeah.
No.
Well, it's like, to me, the perspective comes from just in different roles that I've had where you have a husband and a wife. There's something that's been committed, say the wife or the husband, whichever one. Mm-hmm. But like, for example, as a bishop, you're the bishop of both.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so the one wants to say, well, look at what happened to me. And the other one's like, you represent both. And
That's
there's kind of
right.
like this
Right.
toss up. And then,
That's exactly it.
the verdict is given. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
there's so much at stake, right? There's so much
Yes.
that people are trying to weigh.
Right.
And we as humans,
Right.
there's, especially in the leadership role, right?
Yeah.
You're responsible for this.
Yes.
You have membership
Reconciliation
councils,
or
the
union or-
reconciliation.
yes.
One of the thoughts that I had though is the idea of like, I was just looking up what faith really is, what forgiveness really is, even from a legal perspective.
Right.
Because you could commit a crime and say you steal somebody's money,
Yeah.
right? I could forgive the debt. You
Yeah.
don't have to pay it, but you
Right.
still committed the crime.
That's right.
And so then the reconciliation is
That's
more
right.
of,
That's different.
now let's reestablish the relationship. Let's reestablish the standard. Let's look back to the law of what the law is. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? Am
Yeah.
I correct on that?
Yes. No, that's right. That's right.
And from a religious standpoint, it's like with like these membership councils, it's almost like the forgiveness is the personal side. We almost assume that forgiveness is reconciliation and reconciliation is forgiveness. I
Yes.
wonder. You
right.
know what I'm saying?
But it's not. They're different things.
They're completely different.
Completely different
and I'm
things.
almost thinking that we're thinking maybe that's where one of the gaps is
Yeah.
that we really want justice.
Yes.
We want reconciliation. And we're
Right.
forcing the reconciliation.
That's right.
When really what our job is to do is to figure out for ourselves
Yes.
the personal side of what forgiveness
How do we
is,
forgive?
which can reduce stress, which can
Yeah.
reduce all of these things you mentioned.
Exactly. And one of the things that's the neatest, I think our first step, right, as a victim, and we all have been harmed by others, right, in some way, is to try to forgive. And that's where we, use the power of the atonement to try to forgive. But then the second step, and I think this is kind of like where I see things that really excite me in criminal justice, is where you can be reconciled. And I'll tell you a story that's really amazing. There's a woman who had her son killed by a kid that was his age, kind of like a young person fight, whatever, like a gang fight. And she goes to the trial. She's so angry. She sees this kid and she's just like, when he's sentenced, she says, "I'm going to kill you." She's so angry. And she then just proceeds to visit him every week in prison. She brings him things. He doesn't have a good family. He doesn't have she becomes his mom, basically. This kid that killed her son, right? And then she says to him, at the end of it, she says, "I wanted to kill the man you were, and now we've killed him together. Like, will you be my son?" And she takes him as her own son. He then goes and moves in with her after. That's the kind of stuff. It's mind blowing, and I know it's not expected of everyone. When you think of forgiveness and reconciliation, like sometimes you can have both, and that's where I see the power of the atonement on both sides, and that's real. And there's another story I'll tell you. I talked to my class about this. There's a woman who's raped by her boyfriend. Traumatized by it, scarred, whatever, goes to therapy, eventually decides she's like, I want to confront him. I want to talk it through. And, she's frightened, of course, of this whole thing. She goes out, meets with him, talks to him about it. He's able to kind of come to terms with the mistake he made, obviously the harm that he caused her. They then do TED Talks together, write a book together about kind of the male side, the female side of this horrible situation of rape. And it's like, that's the kind of thing that can happen through the atonement, right?
Wow.
It's like that radical reconciliation. I mean, who would ever expect somebody who is raped to reconcile with the rapist? But that's the kind of thing that can happen through the gospel.
So again, this idea of the effect of religiosity on people who have committed crimes.
Right.
And you're saying even to the point that all of us have committed crimes,
Yes.
not to reduce the severity, but we all need redemption.
That's right.
To a degree. I just think that still it's like, it's hard for people to grapple with some of the things that have happened. Like, how do we do that on a personal level? How do we really get to the point where the victim is now able to do these TED Talks? How do we get there?
I know. And that's where, I mean, there's a lot of hard work to be had. And I think it's really trying to understand the atonement fully, right? And understand it as you think about Jesus Christ. And I think we often think about him suffering in the garden for us victims, right? For those of us who have gone through pain and hurt and, physical pain and emotional pain, all these things, abuse, right? But then we don't think he's also suffered for the vilest of sinners. You think of Alma, right? Alma, the vilest of sinners. He also suffered for him and loves him just as much as he loves the person who was harmed, on the other side. And I just think sometimes we just need to shift our perspective and understand that, he suffered for all of us. He loves all of us, including those who have committed crimes. We are all children of God, bar none. There's not a single person that's excluded from that. And I think that's what makes our doctrine as Latter-day Saints so unique, is that we actually believe that everyone that came on this earth chose Jesus Christ, right? Before. That's right. We believe that we all chose him. And so we are all, in a sense, disciples of Christ before we came. It's going to take us a little time to remember. Some of us longer than others, right?
That's right.
We're taking longer to remember, but we all have it in us. We have this light of Christ. We have this ability to choose him again. And so that, to me, it's like I see my brothers and sisters a little differently when I think we all chose Jesus Christ. The ones that didn't choose Jesus, they didn't get to a body. They didn't get to come. We chose him. We came here as disciples, right? And then we can choose again to be disciples. But I just think when you think of our brothers and sisters that way, it seems like, are there really any people that are unredeemable? I mean, there might end up being. We don't know who that might be, though. And that we're not to judge, right? Jesus Christ will eventually make that decision.
Well, I was thinking about this today because if you look at 3rd Nephi, right? Yeah. He says at the very last chapter, because you think, like, what are the unpardonable sins? That's kind of like what the question is. Like, what is unpardonable? Right? And you would think murder would be that, right? Yeah. And at the very last verse, he says, when he's calling them to repentance after all of the destruction, right? Everything's going crazy. It's like only 2 verses of this chapter, right? He says, what does he say right here? He's like, turn all ye Gentiles from your wicked ways, repent of your evil doings, your lyings, your deceivings, your whoredoms, and your secret abominations, your idolatries, in your murders. Yeah. It's like, wait a second. Yeah. If you really look at that, he's like saying, you can repent. The anti-Nephi Lehis, they repent of their murders. They bury their weapons of war of their murders. Right? And so then what is it that is unpardonable?
I don't know.
That's
the thing. And you think of Jesus, I mean, on the cross, right? He's surrounded by criminals. And from the criminal perspective of who they were, sometimes we think of them as thieves, but they actually were, it's something like felony murder, what they committed. So something akin to killing, but they, they're basically the very worst of criminals that he's surrounded by, right? Felons. And punishable by death was what they're doing. And what does Christ say to the one? One of them is kind of mocking him. The other one is like, what are you talking about? This is the Lord. And Jesus says to him, I'll see you in paradise. And it's like, we don't know what that means. Does that mean he'll be redeemed and can choose Jesus Christ at some point? We don't know. But what we do know is that there is repentance and that he did die for all of us. And he wants every single last one of us to come back, right? Like Elder Kieran said last conference, he's in relentless pursuit. And if God's in relentless pursuit, it's not just of one of us, it's of all of us. And the prophet just admonished us, right? It's like even that last one, I think if it is that last one and you think of who are the ones that we neglect, it's those in prison, it's those that have committed crimes, it's those that are homeless, those that are, right? Those people that are not part of our daily discourse, that part of our people that we think are worth our time.
Yeah, those are the hardest ones that I feel like it's something that we have inside of us that we can control instead of, or the assumptions that we have about it that make it challenging.
Right.
It makes me think of the prodigal son.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because there's a preacher that I really like, and he just recently passed away. He's not a member of the church, but I feel like a lot of his teachings were very, very sound.
Yeah.
His name is Tim Keller. And he has a book about it, and I love his perspective because it's really a story of two sons, right?
Yes.
And so in this story, you have the son who we know who gives up his inheritance and he gives and he wastes all of it.
Yes.
He goes off and he's in this mire finally, eventually, and he's like, you know what? Like I remember, like, even the least of them had a place with my dad at the table, right?
Yes.
I would rather just be like a nothing there. And so he decides to come back. And on his way back, his dad runs to him. What I learned later on is that legally, people who have gone against the family, they can stone them.
They can, right, exactly.
So I was like, why does he run to him? He really loves his son, but he's running ahead of them.
To make sure that he protects him.
To protect him. Yeah. But then what happens when he comes back? The older son is like, what?
Yep.
You want to put a ring on his hand?
Yeah, right.
You want to put a robe on his back?
Right.
And and I feel like, because he's responding to the Pharisees.
That's right.
That's who he's responding to. That's his audience.
Well, it's the Pharisees and the sinners. And what the Pharisees are saying when that happens is, why are you eating with these sinners? And then Jesus is like, well, let me tell you a story.
Do you see?
Oh, I see.
And I'm telling you, though, the hardest one is when you've been doing what's right.
That's right.
You're keeping the commandments. That's right. You've been righteous.
Yeah.
And then something happens to you.
Yep.
And God's saying, I love them too.
Right.
But this was not an unremorseful son.
No.
This was a son who wanted to come back. Right. And I think,
let me be your servant, he
says.
Let
me be your servant.
Yeah.
And
also you think of, I think the biggest problem we have with the prodigal son is we see ourselves as a brother, as a righteous brother. And I think it's easy to see that because we're like, oh, we're covenant keeping Latter-day Saints.
That's right.
But what we need to see ourselves is as the prodigal son. Yeah. Because we all have sin every day. We sin. Why do the prophet tell us to daily repent? Because we're committing sins every day, either commission or omission. And so when we forget that we're the prodigal son and we start thinking we're the brother, then we become the brother.
Well,
right?
There's issues with the brother because the brother is the one who assumes. It's almost like it comes to what we believe and trust in.
Yes.
What Christ has promised.
Right.
That his redemption really is for all those who are willing to come with a broken heart and a contrite spirit.
That's right. And you see that brother and he's changed and he's all like, you can tell that his future is going to be bright because he's felt the lowest of the low. He's like felt some of the pains that like Christ might have felt, because of the suffering and the agony he went through the hardship that he caused himself and his family. And he's a changed man. And you think of, Alma the Younger is the greatest example. I love that story because it goes along with what we're saying so well. He is what he calls himself as the vilest of sinners, right? Working against the church, trying to turn everyone away, right? Very compelling, he's very charismatic, doing all the things to destroy God. Then he converts. And we forget that, like, once he converts, we forget what his past was. But I think sometimes we don't like to think of people, who have been incarcerated, who have made big mistakes, who have, abandoned their families or whatever, things that you might look at and you're like, oh, that person, you just write them off. Yeah. No way, they're done, But then they come to change. And we see this in Alma the Younger. And what is the vilest of sins? I don't know. And it's easy to look at him and be like, oh, it's such a great redemption story. And it's so beautiful. But like, what if you were one of the families that was committed again? What if Alma committed a sin against your family?
Yeah.
One of those vilest of sins. What if that was you that suffered? Would you see his redemption the same way? Right? Or would you be bitter and be like the brother and be like, what? No, he can't be a prophet now. And then we have the biggest book of scripture in the Book of Mormon. What is it? Alma. And it's by Alma the Younger. The quote, vilest of sinners, right? And I've never heard this pointed out, but it's something I noticed recently. I'm like, he's the one that wrote about the seed and the faith. And he's written about all these beautiful doctrines. I mean, faith. Who knows more about faith that someone who had to come to faith after hating, the church, right? And so I just think we don't put these things in context and think about them in the same way. I mean, Alma was a criminal, right? He did bad things. And in those days, it was a crime to do some of the things he did. And I just don't think we think of people the same way today. Like, it's hard to transpose those. It feels like good stories. But what are we supposed to do with the scriptures? We're supposed to liken them into today. And, it's hard.
Well, even the story of the anti-Nephi Lehis, when they chose to bear their weapons of war, and I feel like that is to a degree when it comes to forgiveness, it's like, you're still coming at me, but I'm not going to fight anymore.
Oh, that's the most beautiful thing.
I'm coming to you, you're coming to me, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done fighting.
Right.
I've come to God and I've made, he's forgiven me.
Yes.
And you can kill me if you want. And then they lay prostrate on the ground.
That's the most amazing thing.
They protect their family.
Yep.
And then the Lamanites are like, what?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Right.
What are we doing?
Right.
But it was the example of the individual change within of the anti-Nephi Lehis.
So beautiful.
That allowed them to change.
Right.
So then they saw the example and then they wanted to be baptized.
I know. It's so beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful?
It is beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like, it's that radicalness that comes with Christianity. That's the radical love that Jesus Christ taught, right? It's like, once you convert and you have been killing, you just don't want to kill again, like the anti-Nephi Levites, or, you decide to change. And I think this kind of radical love is what I would love to see infused in our hearts as members of the church. It's like that love of when, somebody shows up to your ward with neck tattoos and face tattoos.
Yeah.
Are you, shielding your children, or are you, putting your hand out to shake their hand and say, welcome, brother. We're so happy to have you, and mean it. Right? Yeah. Are we happy to have that? Do we want that redemption, or do we want it? You know what I mean? Or like, going to the temple and not just putting your friends and family on your temple prayer roll. It's putting the person that harmed you that week and actually praying for blessings for them. Like, that feels radical. That feels like something Jesus would do, right?
But that's a point I think you're making that's interesting. We sometimes, when somebody offends us in some way, we become him.
Yeah.
And we are now having to make the choice of how we respond.
Right.
And we make the assumption that we would respond as a human would when he's inviting us to respond the way that he would. And how would he?
Yep.
The woman, was it John 8, right? He among you who is without sin, let him cast the first stone.
Right. That's right.
Right?
Oh, Jesus does it so well. I mean, to think of, I love the criminal example. So in Mark, right, where he shows up to the guy that's naked, chained up to the cave. Remember that story?
That's right.
Chained up in the cave, possessed with demons.
Yeah.
He's so crazy and so dangerous that they have him locked up in chains because he's harming people.
That's right.
What does Jesus say to him? What's your name? Right? I mean, he goes up to him when everyone's afraid of this guy. He's like, what is your name? Heals him, and then, puts clothes on him, helps him out. But it's like, that's what Jesus says. The woman taking adultery. He's not focused on her sins. He's focused on, helping her. Go and sin no more. Like, let's think for the future, how we can help you.
He could have been like, Obadiah, Jebediah. Yeah. Oh, I know what you did. He could have pointed them all out, but he was silent. He could have called them all out.
Right.
And then he's just like, all of you.
Right. And I think that helps so much. I think sometimes people are judgmental, and you think even within the church, I think sometimes people look at old prophets and are judgmental, or church leaders or Joseph Smith, and people look at things and they're just like judgmental. It's like, but when you take a look back and think about your life, do you want to be judged by the mistake that you made and make that define you? Do you want to be judged on your worst day? Or do you want your life to be taken in context of all the good you tried to do and how your heart was trying to do what's right, right? We all are imperfect. But I just think when you have that perspective, I think it's easier to look at people and just have grace. Be like, I want grace. Let's let you have some grace too, because let's be honest, we all going to need it. Right?
Well, and that answers the question that you mentioned before of how we condemn ourselves, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because the way that we condemn others is the same way that we will be condemned.
Yes.
Now, we have to be clear. when there have been crimes committed against others, we don't want to just say, "Hey, let's just
let's all hang
just
out."
throw
No,
ourselves out there to
no.
continue to be
That's
be
right.
offended."
No, we
right?
want to protect society. We have laws and order for a reason. I think governments can be instituted by God. It's a good thing. But at the same time, once they're held accountable, if they're willing to change, like, you know, kind of like the Gadianton robbers who made a covenant to say, "I'm not going to commit murders anymore. I will never do robberies again," and they meant it. You know, if we can feel that genuine changes happen, I think that's when we say, "Okay, let's give you a chance. And, you know, when people have served their time, especially, right? It's like once they've served their time and they've been accountable, can we give them a chance? Can we try to integrate them and try to love them as we do others? I mean, some of the coolest work our church does is in prison. So I don't know if you know this, but our church does more in Utah prisons than any other church.
Really?
We spend every day there countless hours, thousands of hours. And it makes sense, right? It's like we're disciples of Christ. We want to do what Christ said, which is to go to visit people in hospitals, go to prisons, right? That's one of the places we're specifically admonished to go. And I think it's just neat because you see some of the most powerful stories, and the people that have these callings are very just full of the power of the atonement and of the Savior, because they see firsthand these people that on record, they're people that you want to hide away from, not put your arm around at church, but yet they come to church. They're able to be converted through the power of the scriptures and through prayer and the power of the atonement and Jesus Christ, and they become new people. And I think that is just so exciting.
So if we're going to be honest about this, and you don't have to answer this question, okay? What has been something that's been challenging for you personally to forgive? And how did you do it?
Yeah.
If it's too personal.
I'm trying to think of something that's not too personal. I have one that's personal. But, I can tell you a story that might help, though. So for me, one of the things that's so hard is people harming children. That's really like where my Christian nature it doesn't want to come out. It's like, and so I remember, so recently my little daughter comes home and had this incident at the playground where an older kid does something that's very inappropriate, and just, you know, she's crying, very upset. She's 5 and comes home and tells me. And honestly, my first reaction, and you think like this is what I do for a living, is try to forgive and atonement, you know. And I'm like, I want to punch him in the face. I say that to her when she first tells me, because I'm so angry that this happened to her. And I'm like, how dare you, child, like harm my little 5-year-old, you know, her little innocent self. And I remember saying, I want to punch him in the face. And she says, Mom, no, we're not gonna punch him in the face. She said, let's pray for him. So she says. And so we just proceed to pray for him. I'm like, okay, what do you want to pray for? She's like, let's pray that he doesn't ever do this to anyone else. And that, you know, and I'm like, that is, okay, from the mouth of babes, right? Teach me forgiveness, because that's hard for a parent. You know how it is.
That's
like,
right.
Imagine one of your children being harmed by someone. It's like, but that's where, and I think it's hard when it hits home. For all of us. That's where forgiveness is hard. And I'm not saying it's easy. It's not. Because even thinking about this moment, I'm still a little bugged at this kid. I'm like, we dealt with it, and the kids talked to, and it's fine and everything's okay. But there's times where things aren't okay, and it's, the repercussions can come back. And I think grief and forgiveness is a process. It's something we have to use Jesus Christ often for that. I don't think it's like a one time you pray and try to feel the power of the atonement and then you move on. I think lots of things are really painful, and you have to go through lots of healing for it. But the only way you really heal from that is Jesus Christ. I can testify to that for sure.
I think that it hurts more when someone hurts someone that you've created. Mm-hmm. It hurts more. Like
a special bond.
If there's a special bond when somebody injures someone that you've sacrificed to create, or even that you create, or that's your family. Yeah. It hurts.
It does hurt.
It hurts more. And I feel like if there's anything and it's something that I wrestle with to this day, like when somebody hurts your kids, it's just, this whole conversation is more challenging. So I know there's people out there that have had that happen, and maybe that you have been a child and something happened to you. Yeah. And the conversation's been really helpful for me, because it's interesting. I prayed for charity, and then God gave me a really good way to learn charity. Oh, and in a way that I never thought that I would even consider it. Yeah. And I think that perhaps that might be a full circle, a way to bring this full circle too is, and I'll just read it here. I've been thinking about this verse so long in Moroni 7. And a lot of people know of this, right? a lot of times we want to take other people's sins and we want to be the judge.
Yes.
But the judge isn't like that.
Right.
And in even the court of law, it's almost like the judge's job is to see if there's any remorse, to see if there's any, and it almost can, and to some degree, lighten the sentence, right?
Yes.
They want to see the heart of the individual, you know?
Right.
And only God knows that.
Yes.
And
think of an all-knowing judge where he does know their heart, their background, like every
and
bit of it.
he does know everything.
Yeah.
And so I obviously cannot do two things at the same time.
I know, sorry, I'll stop.
No, you didn't do anything. But this is the verse that I've really been thinking about a lot lately. And it's in 7 verse 45. And it says, charity suffereth long and is kind and envieth not, is not puffed up, seeketh not her own, not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in the truth, beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. But then he reminds us, he says, wherefore, my beloved brethren, if ye have not charity, ye are nothing. For charity never faileth. Wherefore cleave unto charity, which is the greatest of all, for all things must fail. Charity is the pure love of Christ, and it endureth forever. And whosoever is found possessed of it at the last day, it shall be well with them. He is the charity. And I think that he suffereth long.
Yes.
He's on the cross.
Yes.
And it's this crossroads of heaven and hell, good and bad. And it's like, why do bad things happen to good people? It's like, he's the epitome of that.
Right.
And
Right.
he's the one who paid for it.
Right.
He's the one who paid for the sins of the
Right.
sinner and the one who has to now cope with being the one who's the victim.
Right.
And we have to cleave to him.
Right.
And if we don't, that's when I feel like we're in danger.
Yeah.
Because now we have danger of now being the one committing the sin.
That's right.
Of the envy, of the
Right.
hatred, of the grudge, right?
Right. And you think of like, how do we have charity in this pure love of Christ? I think about, as we were talking about people harming our children, I was thinking about my son, and he got some really bad cuts, and a few times, like one of my sons, my oldest, Keon, he's like always getting hurt. And it's like every time he's bleeding, I don't know if you've had this where your kids are really like seriously gashed or bleeding, you know, when they need stitches. Like when I've seen this, like it hurts my heart.
It
like
does.
it's actually, I feel physical pain. And he's like, Mom, it's a good thing you weren't a doctor. And I'm like, it's actually not that. Like I'm okay with
it's your
blood.
kid.
It's because you're my son. But then you think of, as you're talking about Jesus Christ with Atonement, the Father watching his son bleed from every pore, and the love that he has for his only begotten son, and to let him die, let him suffer, let him be tortured when he could have just snapped his finger and made it all stop. I mean, that's the kind of love that we're trying to emulate. That's the kind of love that he has for his son, that he has for all of us. I mean, it's powerful, and we can feel it. As a parent, you can feel it a little bit. But then we have this like anger that we want to respond when people harm our kids. And Heavenly Father, what does he have? He doesn't have anger. He still has love. And of course, Jesus Christ, who even went through it, says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Right? I mean, he has this love. They both do. They're the same. And it's just so powerful.
Jesus says that vengeance is mine.
Yeah.
And it hurts us more to just let it fester in us.
Right.
But it's not easy to do.
No.
And it takes time.
It does. Yeah.
And it takes sacrifice.
Yeah. And I think it takes really channeling Jesus Christ, right? And I think like when we are taught to try to be like him, like the prophet said, read his word, just like study him. And I think when you study him, really study him and his life and what he went through, it really does put our pains in perspective and what we've gone through. Because none of us have even come close to what the betrayal, the abuse, the lies and deceit and all these things that he went through. Like, you think you've been lied to? Well, Jesus Christ was betrayed by one of his 12. You know, I mean, you go down the list. And so I think, to me, that's how forgiveness and atonement is expedited, is through really digging in and studying him. So it's like, that's what I would hope that, you know, people that are struggling with anything that they're trying to forgive someone for, channel Jesus Christ. That's the only way we can learn. It's the only way.
It's like, I feel like it's faith in the Lord Jesus Christ, second repentance. And I would say First, faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. Second, forgiveness.
Oh, I love that.
Right?
Yeah, because repentance and forgiveness are one.
They're one, right?
Yeah.
So let's take
That's a
it
good
full circle.
Yeah.
Your mom, she has this experience with her
Yeah.
family member who betrays her.
Right.
What does it look like? How did she do all of these things that we've just been mentioning now to turn to charity, to turn to Christ? How did she do it?
I mean, her heart is converted to Jesus Christ. I mean, that's why she just decides to risk her life and, start over and become a Christian. And through that, I think she really tries to be that. And now it's, doing all the things that a Christian would do, which is trying to reconcile and to see the reconciliation. I mean, I just think about our Savior, and he's like, wrongfully convicted as a criminal. He's punished. He's, scourged and has thorns on his head, beaten and tortured, and then put on the cross. Like, what does he say? Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And I just think about him and his example. And I think my mom trying to emulate that because she knows about Jesus Christ. She's been taught of him as she joined the church, and that she's done the same thing. And I look at her life now, and this same woman, so this family member who turned her in, outcast by the rest of my family. My mom's the one who finds out her daughter's having a baby. She decides to throw a baby shower for her. It's like she's not just like, oh, I'm just going to mail you a gift, because that seems more reasonable to be kind.
Yeah.
Christ, like, she's going to go out there and throw her a shower, invite her to stay in our home, and as long as she needs to get set up in the U.S. And I mean, that's the kind of thing that we can only do through the power of Jesus Christ. It's amazing. I recently went down there and we celebrated my son's birthday, and the whole family was there, and I see this woman, the very woman that betrayed my mother. And she's there, and my mother's buying her dinner and her family and including her with everyone else in the family, even though the rest of the family is like, why are you inviting her? Still to this day, like, wanting to hold this grudge. But that's not what a Christian does, right? If Jesus Christ was there, what would he do? He would embrace her and say, I love you. And she has, through all these years, really atoned for the sin. It's like she's suffered so much for the shame and the betrayal of her family, and that she's really come to a better place and is willing to accept this love for my mom. I think that's the kind of reconciliation that comes through the gospel. And I think it's so hopeful for a society that we have is so divided and so full of crime and riddled with sin, right?
This has been a beautiful experience.
Oh, thank you.
I believe that what we discussed is true. It's not easy to swallow, but I believe that it's true.
I agree.
But don't take our word for it. Find out for yourself. This is Let's Get Real. Until next time.